The theme of today's sermon is mind and body, or more specifically training, which is something I've been thinking about quite a lot. And I had this amazing experience going to Latvia for my annual leave last week. I decided to take some time out and go on holiday to Riga. Originally I was going to go by myself, but two of my friends found out about it and they decided to book and come along as well. But our flight was at 6 a.m. from Stanton, so we left Wales at 1 a.m. We were all too excited to sleep, so we drove there, we were on the plane, and I thought this is my time to get a bit of shut-eye. It was a 2.5-hour flight. But 1 hour into the flight, this girl who was sitting next to me booted me in my shin quite hard, which woke me up after an hour of my sleep, which was slightly annoying because I missed my sleep that night. And anyway, we got talking, and it turns out that she is from Latvia. She was working in Wales for a while, and she was going to Latvia for a spiritual retreat. And we got talking about the spirit world. I told her I was a pastor, and I told her about my youth work with YSP. And she was really, really inspired by this and opened up about her spiritual experiences, her spiritual practices as well, and how she can astral project and heal through Reiki and offer spiritual healing. And this was amazing to hear. And she said to me, I think we were meant to sit next to each other, and she said, I have a feeling that our paths were meant to cross. When I thought about this, I probably thought that she kicked me on purpose, even though she said she did it in her sleep. But thinking about it now, I don't think she did. But she opened up how she was struggling in her life and that she felt lost and that she needed someone to speak to. So we had a great chat about that. And even though I was on holiday, my idea was to kind of escape from church work, so to speak, escape from YSP, and just go away and kind of be by myself and have thoughts to myself. And what I learned from this experience was that our training, our relationship with God, doesn't have to be these huge gestures, doesn't have to be these big offerings, but actually these small steps and the smaller things working towards God are just as important as these large leaps of faith or these large acts. And I completely forgot about this. I thought I'm going on holiday, I got 5 days to myself and I'll just pick up where I left off when I come back. But I was starkly reminded by God that this is not the case, and that I should not forget God and forget that I'm continually training to develop my relationship with Him. So we were lining up then to go through immigration, and due to Brexit and going into Latvia, they were particularly strict about where we were going, the stamps in my passport, where we were staying, our contacts there, which did surprise me. So we were queuing for quite a while, so I took time to speak to Michael and Shane about what happened on the plane and how I met this amazing young lady. And we were talking about God in general, and someone behind me said, "Oh, you're talking about God?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a pastor." He said, "Oh, that's amazing. I used to be a heroin addict for 15 years. He said, "I overdosed on heroin about 4 years ago." And he said, "I had this near-death experience where I was going through a tunnel and I heard the voice of God." And he said, "My life's completely changed because of it." And he was actually going to Latvia to get a gastric bypass, because he said even though he's kicked the addiction of heroin, he's obsessed with food now, and he's replaced his addiction with God and food. But he said, I have no control over my eating, I need to control my body more, just as Jesus commanded. So he said the only way is to get a gastric bypass. But he completely changed his life. He's got a team of 20 people doing gardening in London, and really successful. But it was really interesting that on that journey there was 2 people willing to talk about God and to talk about the spiritual realm. It's funny also that Uncle Ed mentioned the importance of the Chung Seung Gyung, so I'll just read Father's words on Father's definition of training. What is training? Training means tempering and polishing one's character. Where do we find the standard for this tempering and polishing? There are 2 types of people among you: external people, who amount to little more than flesh, and internal people. Taking the fall into account, we have external fallen people and internal fallen people. Both need training in order to gradually come to resemble the character of an original person. The character of an original person resembles a child to whom nature bows and God kisses and embraces in his bosom. Accordingly, the character of an original person is the standard for your training. So through Father's definition, it's very clear that the purpose of our lives is to come back to Father, to God, through Father's words, and to go back to the original standard and the original intention for why we were made. My father-in-law gave me this lovely book this summer. It's called Everyone's Guide to the Hereafter by Ken Atkinhurst. Has anyone read this? Okay. It's quite well known within the church community and within the spiritual community. But the Spirit Guide gives a really clear definition of the purpose of our lives in here. If only you and all mankind would accept the simple truth that there is no death and that your time on earth is but a place of learning, whence the soul can make a start that will take it on from one state of development to the next, ever improving until we know not what except it is God's wish for us and that He loves us, and it can only be for our own good. So when reading spiritual texts and listening to people's spiritual experiences, I always take them with a bit of a pinch of salt, because everyone's experiences are different and unique, and people have different ideas on the spirit world. But one common theme is that we do not die, but our life continues, just as the fetus develops into a baby, and then when the baby is born, we don't say the baby dies and the baby's reborn into this life, but it's more of a transition, a change into the next life. I strongly believe that our time on earth, that we don't actually die, but we just transition into the next form, the next stage of our life. So life continues. So the purpose of our lives here is to train, and through today's talk I'm hoping to show you how life is similar to a gym. So the gym is very important for me. It's helped me develop my self-awareness of myself. If I'm feeling low spiritually, or if I'm having a rough time, I find training really difficult, and my performance is not as good. So even the gym is an external thing. It's helped train me emotionally and arguably spiritually. So when you go into the gym, does anyone know how you build muscle? The basic principles of muscle building. You've recently started, and you were telling me you're going to the gym with Sam after this. How do you build muscle? What's the basic principle?
So you have to overwork it so your muscle isn't strong enough.
Exactly. You have to break down the muscle fibers in some way, whether it's through adding weight, adding repetitions, controlling the tempo, adding more volume. It's the basic principles of how you build muscle. You have to put it through some kind of stress, some kind of difficulty. So if you just walk into the gym, I've seen this so many times, people buy memberships, it's new year, new me, or whatever it may be. They walk into the gym, they spend a lot of time talking, chatting, Instagramming, filming things, watching various things, chatting. But actually, they're not putting the muscle through any stress. They're not growing biologically. They're not getting any better in terms of performance. So just turning up to the gym is not good enough. And also just putting in 50% effort and not actually trying to break down the muscle with the aim of it growing bigger is also not good enough. So our life is very similar, that we go through challenges, we go through difficulties, we go through experiences with the aim of building ourselves up spiritually then, so we can reach happiness, and then we can reach a closer place and a closer intimate relationship with God. On Friday it was my turn to lead morning devotion, and I came across this quote which I found fascinating, and it's really been puzzling me for the last few days. It is restoration through indemnity, not indemnity through restoration. There cannot be indemnity through restoration. The concept that restoration could bring forth indemnity cannot exist, not even in the Garden of Eden. So, who likes indemnity here? Yeah? Well, what's people's general concept of indemnity? Someone want to shout out some? Difficult? Suffering? Investment? Anything else? Because within my family, I don't know if you've noticed this as well, Isaac and Kyan, growing up, if something went wrong, the first thing people would say, you're just going through indemnity. Right? And I think that there's this misconception, certainly in my family, that indemnity is always something bad, something attached to difficulty and struggle. For example, I remember my car broke down, and I think my grandmother said, "Oh, you know, you're paying indemnity." I'm thinking, am I really? But yeah, it's very interesting that we've attached this idea of indemnity linked with suffering. But what Father was saying here was very clear, and he mentioned it twice, that the concept of restoration could bring forth indemnity cannot exist. So the idea of restoration comes first. So what is restoration? Restoration is going back to God's ideal, going back to the Garden of Eden, restoring the spiritual and physical fall. And the only way we can do that is through indemnifying it. An indemnity meaning repairing a mistake that has happened. So actually our whole lives should be us continually paying indemnity, not in the sense of continually paying penance, continually having bad things happen to us just under the name of indemnity, or continual struggles. But for us to be consciously working towards the idea of restoration, working towards having ideal families, working towards having an intimate, close relationship with God, back to how the original ideal is. So if we have this idea of indemnity, it really places the onus on us to take responsibility for our lives, to take responsibility for our actions, our thoughts and our commitments. So in this way, indemnity is very much like building muscle and going to the gym, where you make a commitment, you're working towards a long-term goal, and you see it as a long process, a slow and steady but continual process, not just something you do when you're not on holiday like I did. So thank you very much.